Well, that was great. Good looking video, guys. Good to see you guys hard at work this week. Just a reminder, everybody, welcome Cybertooth. They're Team 3940, and they're from Kokomo, Indiana. Can I have you guys introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'm Gus. I'm the team president.
And I'm Lucy, and I'm a freshman this year.
Cool. Well, welcome to Check-In, guys. Good to see you again, Gus. Lucy, welcome to Check-In as well here.
Thank
so
you,
let's talk about your week so far and how your build season's going. So last week when we met you, you guys were literally in the middle of figuring out your design priorities for the year. And we managed to get you off in time so you guys could get into that meeting. So what are the results from that meeting? What's you guys planning for the season?
So by the end of that meeting, we came out with our top priority list for this season. And so first off, we need to drive. That's our #1 priority. Make sure a robot can move.
Okay.
And then second, we've got fuel. We're going to focus on being a little bit more of a fuel bot this year, up in the high goal. And then we've got gears, and then after gears comes rope climbing.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. I've seen a lot of teams, especially Robot in 3 Days, which I saw you guys were looking at in some of those pictures from your video. They did a lot of focus on gears because there can be worth a lot of points. What drove you guys to put fuel above gears and climbing?
Well, we saw that fuel was an opportunity to be able to get points from anywhere on the field. Well, we know you can only shoot from the launch pad, but you can receive fuel from the retrieval zone, the hoppers, as well as off the floor if you have a floor intake. So we saw, rather than being able to receive from one area like the gears, we were able to receive from everywhere and get a lot more points in, rather than having to traverse the field every time.
Oh, I see. So you're willing to sort of hang out in a less busy area to get all the balls and leave the gears to other folks, basically?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
cool.
Our priority is definitely to get at least 2 rotors, with getting one in Auton and then another hopefully in Teleop.
Okay, that makes sense. So just a reminder, I almost forgot to say, if you guys in the chat on Twitch have questions for these guys or any of our teams as we go, you can type them into the Twitch chat with !Q, then your question, and our chat bot will pull them in. Okay, so let's continue on with our discussion with Cybertooth here. So we saw some prototypes in your video. You guys work out of the Andy Mark warehouse, so I assume you guys use tons of Andy Mark stuff in your prototyping. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how that process kind of goes?
Well, so we have a whole bunch of supplies to work with. So we start out with a basic design, and then depending on our materials, we try to bring that to life and either use. I know I'm on the gear team, so we use a lot. At first, our first prototype was made out of cardboard, and then we've made 2 other ones out of plastic. So it really depends on what we're going for, and we use different materials for that.
Yeah, it's really interesting with our different subgroups that we have for each thing that we need to prototype, because you can kind of see the different kinds of prototyping that could come about on an FRC team, because every single team has done something different to prototype.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So kind of, maybe this is related, I'm not quite sure. In your video, I saw what looked like everybody on the team surrounding almost set up kind of like what looked like the cardboard prototype of your gear collector, and then a whole bunch of other things that are held in space. Can you tell us a little bit what was going on there?
So that was when we our drive-based team had first set up the dimensions that we were looking at with a tape perimeter on the floor. And so everybody who had started a prototype brought their mechanism up to see how things would fit together within that constraints that we had laid out.
Yeah, and at the beginning and end of each meeting, we like to bring the entire team together and recap what we've accomplished and what we're hoping to accomplish at the next meeting.
Okay, and that was your sort of meeting, your wrap-up meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Just filling everybody in on what we're doing.
That's a really good idea. I know that on my team, we do that as well. In fact, I think ours just ended a few minutes ago, actually about now. But very cool. That's awesome. So what did you guys learn when you first put all the prototypes together on this tape line on the floor?
We definitely learned that we have to be very careful with allocating volume to certain extensions. I know our gear group had looked at picking up gears off the floor, which would require about an 8-inch extension beyond the bumpers, but we decided that that wasn't really plausible because of what we're looking to do with extensions for the fuel stuff. Especially
because picking up gears off the ground wasn't one of our top priorities. We have to make cutbacks on our priorities and definitely go with fuel, which is our number one, and then after that is gears. So
okay, that's a smart decision. I know it's hard sometimes, especially when you're on the gear group. For example, I know you, like you said, you are Lucy.
Yeah.
Sometimes be like, okay, I guess my thing's got to be set, right.
Like cool. You've just spent work on that, and now you can't get to do it. But I mean, we have to make compromises. It's just part of it.
Yep, exactly. That's awesome. So we've heard about your general prototyping process. Why don't we talk about how the prototypes are going? So we'll start with you, Lucy, and talk about the gears first. So you said you've made 3 prototypes.
Yeah.
What conclusions have you drawn from your prototypes so far?
Well, like we said, at first we were trying to pick up gears off the ground, and that we just have like a compartment for where the gear will fall in from the retrieval zone, and then that way straight from there we can place it on the peg. And then we also have flaps that we were planning on using to scoop up the gears off the ground and also use them as a ramp for when they're sliding in from the retrieval zone. But since we don't have as much space to work with, we had to cut back on that. And so now we're just more of a compartment with our now 3rd prototype, I think, which we're still kind of making the final details on. We have a lot shorter flaps and a lot more room for the gear to fall in.
Okay, I see. That makes sense. So it's almost completely passive then in that case, right?
Yeah, for the most part. We
Okay.
still haven't decided if we want to use some kind of pneumatic or maybe a motor, but it's still in the process of deciding what we want to do and what not to do.
Okay, cool. Now, the way you describe it sort of reminds me of the Robot in 3 Days 1.0 sort of gear prototype thing. Did you guys draw inspiration from that?
Yeah, we definitely looked at Robot in 3 Day videos to draw inspiration from, but we've modified it to a way that we think will best fit our needs.
Yep, makes a lot of sense. You know, if they did it in 3 days, you can do better in 6 weeks. That's for sure.
Yeah, true.
Cool. So we've talked about the gear. Let's talk a little about shooting. We saw some pictures of you guys shooting the ball. You guys had a single shooter wheel, it looked like. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm heading up the shooter and fuel manipulation department on the team. So we have decided to go with a single flywheel for our shooter. We're not really sure how many shooters we'll have at the moment, but we really like the front spin that it gets on the ball because we found that in our prototyping, the front spin, we got more in to the goal with the front spin rather than without it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of, that's
when they would hit the rim.
Oh, so they'd hit the rim and then curve into the basin as opposed to curving back or bouncing off?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So when you guys are shooting, what's your target range? Since shooting's your number one priority, are you shooting from right up against the boiler, or are you shooting from, all the way back to at the edge of the landing zone or somewhere in between?
Well, right now we're looking at a turreted shooter so that we can shoot from multiple places. I think that our 3 main places to shoot from are the hopper that is in the launch pad, right up in front of the boiler, and then from the gear peg.
Okay, so why did you choose those positions?
Well, up right up against the boiler, we figured that was a very concrete spot and a little bit harder to defend against because you're not really there's less sides to hit you on.
Yeah, that's like the layup shot, basically.
Yeah, and then the hopper, we've looked into doing a 40 high goal auto. We've discussed it, and so we want to have that that ability if we figure that out.
Ooh, that sounds
as well as Yeah, and then the gear peg is so as we're placing a gear, if we decide to do gear in a match, we can still shoot and get those points in while we're doing that.
Okay, so that's going to necessitate that your gear placer and your shooter. Well, actually, it depends. You mentioned a turreted shooter. Does that mean your turret's going to spin 180, or that you're going to have the two parts on opposite sides of your robot?
I don't think we've really decided the actual layout of where things are going to be yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we'll figure that out probably in the next week or two once we start getting all the components together.
That makes sense. So you said that you're not sure how many shooters you want on your robot. What does that mean? Are you going to try to shoot from multiple sides, or how does that work exactly?
I think the idea is to have multiple shooters in line with each other and try to get a consistent shot among the three of them. So then the balls fly in similar arcs, and then hopefully all go in the goal at the same time.
I see. And the idea is to have more throughput by paralleling a single shooter 3 times?
Yes. So then we're getting a higher ball capacity in the goal rather than having to rely on shooting super fast because of motor recovery time. Very
cool. So why don't you tell us really quick about the mechanicals of the shooter prototypes you guys are working on? What kind of motors are you using? How successful are they? And what does the geometry kind of generically look like?
Right now, we are just currently we've been testing with a sim and then various treads, and so it's kind of just it's pretty much just a wheel between 2 sheets of polycarb with a curved ramp that leads into it that we've been testing for accuracy with different treads and stuff.
Okay, and how's your accuracy been going so far? Have you found something that's working better than others, or?
So we've tested a lot of different treads as well as different wheels, and we found our best accuracy so far was with the black compliant wheel. We got about 70% in the high goal with that, and then we still have a couple more treads to test that we've found could possibly be more accurate.
So just to be clear, this is the black compliant wheel. That's the one that Andy Mark recently put out?
Yeah.
Oh, dude. The one that's got all the funny looking holes in it?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
The other issues that we've been having with the treads is not only are they're not as accurate, but they also wear after a few hundred shots. So that means that we would have to switch it out every few matches or even after every match. So that's also another variable that we're considering.
Yeah, I just picked up on a word, a few hundred shots? How many balls have you guys shot?
A lot.
A lot.
That 70% figure was from shooting 100 balls through a wheel and getting 70 in. It wasn't yeah.
Wow. So that's some pretty confident testing you've got going on there.
Yeah.
Wow. So do you guys have a regimen for how many you're supposed to shoot in a row, or?
Yeah, with each tread we've tested, we have shot 100 balls through each one to see how much wear happens after each one. And so we'll do cycles of 100 and switch the wheels out between.
Wow.
It's actually a pretty interesting process how we do it. We just take pieces of tape and shoot it against a wall and then mark on the wall where it hit, and we have a cutout of the top of the boiler so that way we can measure it, and see what percentage we have.
Okay, so it's kind of like a target at a firing range almost. You just sort of target. All right, neat. Wow, I like that idea. That's really good. And Lord goodness knows that it's great to shoot as many balls as you can, or as much as you can, to get reliable data, because it's really easy to shoot 10 and say, oh, I got 8 out of 10. We're good. Yeah. All right, cool. So I'll really quickly ask you a question about climbing. You guys said that climbing was your 4th priority, and we saw a little bit of some climbing prototypes in your video. Do you want to talk really briefly about that?
Well, that subgroup has been working on a lot of different prototypes that they have, including having loops and different knots, and we're ultimately going to decide which one we like the most. And I think that they've even, for some prototyping, done some CADing and drawing out sketches and made a few hardware store runs to get different supplies. So, yeah.
Yep. I know that feeling. So from what you guys have seen, do you have one that looks like it's more probable than not yet, or?
Not really. Actually, all of the ones they've designed have been pretty good. That we haven't found any major flaws in any of them. We've looked at using a piece of paracord and looping it, and then having hooks on a spool, and that's worked very well for us.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So when you say hooks, are they like macro hooks, not like Velcro hooks?
Yeah, like macro hooks.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Not sure I ever thought I'd be saying that word, but all right. we got a couple of questions from the chat, so let's answer one of them right now. We're going to put our first question up on the board. Also, all day long, if you guys in the chat want to ask questions, just type !Q and put them into the chat. All right, our first one coming up here. This one's coming up. Have you guys encountered problems with balls hitting each other mid-air? Guys, what do you think?
We haven't really tested rate of fire much yet, so we haven't encountered that problem. I think we're assuming that we will sometime soon, but we've not yet, so we're not worrying about it yet.
Okay, so you haven't done a lot of volume testing. You've just done more like one or two hand-fed sort of stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. All right, well, we'll definitely check up on that next week and see where you guys land. We've got another question in from the chat. We'll put it up on the screen so everybody can take a look at home here. Okay, this is a really good question. How many balls do you guys estimate your ball holder on your bot will hold? That's something we totally forgot about. You guys are primarily shooting. Are you guys going to hold 10 balls or much more?
I think the idea is to hold. I think our fuel group, we definitely talked about holding hopefully upwards of 70 or around there. We want to have a large volume so we can get maximum points per cycle.
Absolutely. All right. So are you guys going, do you know if you're going tall or short yet?
I think short's what we're going with. We've pretty much decided that.
Cool. All right. Well, Cybertooth, thank you so much for coming on to check in today. That's all the time we have for this week, but I'm really eager to see what you guys come up with next week. So good luck. And everybody else, we're going to be back in just a moment. We got our next team up. It's team 3847 Spectrum, and they're from Houston, Texas. Yep. No, excuse me. I made a mistake. That's my bad. We're doing team 2337. They're from Michigan. See, my geography is all messed up. I'm sorry about that. Cybertooth, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and we'll be right back with the Engine Nerds. Bye-bye, guys.
See ya.
Thank you.